Thank you, Hiren, for being here today. This is the FEM session for November, and I'm really pleased to be here with Hiren Panchal. And I am just going to do the intro, and then we will get on to our Q&A. And if people keep joining, because we've only got a couple of people watching live, I will let people in. But as I said, we always record this, and you'll be able to watch back at your own leisure. So I've asked Hiren to join us today as the first male speaker for the FEM group to highlight really the importance of us recognising International Men's Day, which in the UK falls this month on the 19th of November. I'm keen to support International Men's Day because I'm really worried and shocked about the statistics around male suicide and poor mental health. Men make up 75% of all deaths by suicide, and it's the biggest cause of male deaths under 50. And we know that poor financial well-being can play a big part in this, which is what I'm hoping we can talk about a little bit more today. So in the UK, the aim of recognising International Men's Day this month is to make a positive difference to the well-being and lives of men, to celebrate the contribution that men make in the world, and to improve gender relations and promote gender equality. As we know, allyship is absolutely vital, especially in our profession, but I do believe that that goes both ways. So let me tell you a bit about Hiren. Hiren is a father, founder of WENSONS Financial and WENSONS Legacy, a financial planner and a financial coach. And for him, family comes first. His world is powered by a loving wife and 4 demanding children. His role of papa has taught him more than he envisaged it ever would, like multitasking, influencing, and the importance of next-gen planning. Known for his positivity, compassion, and sense of humour and building on authentic and meaningful relationships, Hiren is widely known in the next-gen planning community, and he provides trusted advice and guidance to many, many clients to enable them to live the lives that they visualise. So thank you, Hiren, for joining me today, and welcome.
Thank you, Gretchen. I'm privileged being the first male guest on the FFEM. I don't know, so thank you for having me. And hopefully, I look forward to sort of giving some value or providing value to your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else that you just want to tell us, want to tell everyone a little bit about WENSONS, or anything else around your work with, say, the financial wellbeing group that you could share just before we start our questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure you may or may not know. I also, for my sins, actually vice chair for the Institute of Financial Wellbeing. So it does create great sort of background in terms of for me to understand the work that they do helps towards sort of helping me in achieve our client relationships or so as well. So yeah, so that's been as of I think just under a year actually now. So
I didn't know you were vice chair. I knew you were really involved with it, but I didn't know that you'd taken on an official
yeah,
position.
I don't think they shout about it that much. So I am. So yeah, no, it's good to have that as a team and sort of individuals to sort of give me greater insights into that sort of financial well-being world.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about WENSONS?
Well, WENSONS itself, you were right in sort of noting that we now have 2 siblings to the organization. We have WENSONS Financial and WENSONS Legacy. Now, secondary, the second was born during the height of sort of the pandemic, and it was very much for the purpose around sort of ensuring we're having meaningful conversations with clients around legacy planning, not something as simple as just sort of we discussed estate planning, but it's sort of going a little bit deeper around meaningful conversations with not just the immediate clients, but their sort of beneficiaries, their family members or so. So I think it's allowed us to have more sort of depth of conversations. And there is also then, I believe yourself and I were both also a cohort in financial coaching. So it was set up effectively to bridge that gap between sort of the advice gap effectively, because not everybody is a financial planner or financial planning client, should I say. So it was nice to sort of be able to have an avenue where we could provide guidance to maybe that next generation who may benefit or would be the beneficiaries of receiving the wealth from
Yeah.
clients and such. So yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
So today, what I really would like to do is talk a little bit about the links that we know come up so often between financial well-being, mental health, financial stress, and
Mm.
the roles that us as financial planners, financial planning practices, paraplanners, when we're thinking about building financial plans, we can do in improving financial well-being and therefore by extension hopefully better mental health. So shall we start with the questions and start talking about that?
Sure, sure, absolutely.
So do you believe that financial well-being, well, to start off with, do you believe it is financial well-being is closely linked to mental health, and then maybe why do we think that it is so closely linked?
Um, yes, in the nutshell, if I have to sort of answer the question at the sort of height of it, but I believe, and financial well-being, in my opinion, is not a new sort of subject matter. It has been around from probably day dot as such, but we just believe that mental well-being or mental health seems to be one that gets sort of more focus in the sort of the workplace, whilst financial well-being is probably the key contributor to many of the aspects of challenges and stress that sort of brings up in a workplace environment. So I think they are very much intrinsically linked because effectively money issues lead to sort of stress, anxiety, even sort of depression. So that and sort of that sort of insecurities around it, it sort of creates it can disrupt, even such basic needs like if people are concerned about sort of paying the rent, sort of housing, maybe health issues. It's even sort of the stability that it provides to then sort of. So I do. You're absolutely correct in that they're both intrinsically linked, but trying to sort of highlight which one affects the other. Sort of, it's hand in hand. I'm in the camp that financial well-being is the one that's probably should have more priority because I believe that creates a lot more of a stress and leads to poorer mental health also. So I think it's sort of because it impairs decision making in the basic form, and I'm sure you'll probably cover it, but there is a lot of sort of stigma associated to sort of finances generally as well, in terms of sort of people how they would want to or whether they're open to talking about money.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
talking about money is a big bugbear of mine. Like, no one, like, I don't think that we talk about money enough. I don't think we openly talk about it. I speak to people, especially on my podcast all the time, and they're
right.
like, "Oh no, I don't talk about money with friends. I don't, no, 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 And some of them, even if they talk about money as a family, it's very much like high level, like really kind of like not at any real depth. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's quite a challenge.
it is, and I think that's exactly the bit where we need to be normalizing more. And I think it's quite apt. I'm sure when the recording goes out, but it's actually Talk Money Week with MAPS this week between sort of Monday and Friday, and it's very much around sort of normalizing having a conversation around money. And as planners, I also find that it's difficult to have family members as clients because it's that part about where families or even sort of relatives don't particularly want to diverge financial information, even though that's what you do as a role and have to do to sort of support. So it's very high level. It's very sort of a taboo subject. I think the statistic is that people are more willing to tell you about their sort of sexual preferences than they're about their
Talk about
financial.
their sex life, yeah, rather than
Absolutely.
money. Yeah, we do.
Absolutely. Which
Yeah,
is you would think that would be the opposite, right? So it's that part where it's and that I feel is where the challenge lies in terms of sort of being able to talk openly about it, and that may in itself, when you talk about sort of the international sort of men's day as such, and this year I think the theme is actually sort of positive role models, male role models. And just as a sort of a segue, actually, the next day to International Men's Day is actually International Children's Day. So potentially you have 48 hours of sort of having those conversations around the relationships that individuals have with sort of the men in our lives, be it sort of even with children, be it male children or female
Mm.
children. So I think it's a good opportunity this year to sort of make this more the norm, should we say?
And it's interesting because I don't think anyone likes talking about, but yeah, naturally talk about money. So people listening to this who are involved in the financial services sector, and maybe if you're an accountant, what I tend to find is if you're in professional services that are associated with money, you're just in a more natural state of it feeling like it's a regular conversation because you have it all the time. So it becomes
Yeah.
more ingrained in your life. And that probably also resonates out slightly to your family because you're a bit more open about asking some questions that might be difficult. And if you're trained in coaching, financial
Mhm.
planning, then I think you can do those things a lot more naturally. But there is a massive, massive thing, especially I think with men, and it is being borne out in these statistics, where that role, that kind of historical kind of position that men had in our family lives and society of
Mm.
being the breadwinner, of being having that as their core driver, being the protector and everything. We know that those things are being, sadly, well, no, it's not sadly, because of feminism, they're becoming difficult to define about those roles. And I think some of that is causing some of the problems that we're seeing. But also that kind of, because you were the breadwinner, like
Yeah.
if you have trouble with money, like it's not natural to go, I'm struggling, or and talk about those things because you're the one who's, that male provider was that strong. That was what it was all about previously.
No, you're absolutely correct on that, because it's sort of almost that stigma is around uh, if you were to be, say, having struggles with money, or so implies a lack of success,
Yeah,
or sort of stability as such. So, and it's almost sort of making itself it's just showing vulnerabilities that will challenge those sort of typical ideas of masculinity, as you say. It's that I don't want to say I'm struggling, and it be even with your partner or with sort of family members, you want to be seen to be keeping up with the Joneses, or so,
yeah,
even though
and I
you might
think,
not be able to, you
and it
know?
takes a lot. I think that's the big thing that takes a lot to show. We talk a lot about, don't we? Vulnerability, showing that you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about that now, but and I think that, but I think we forget actually how hard that might be if you have been in that position where you've been the person who are, you've got, a wife and children who are
Yeah.
reliant on you, to then say, I'm struggling, I've lost my job, whatever, to come home and deliver that.
Yeah.
I think that we forget that, when we talk about vulnerability, it's not an easy thing. There's things that's a bit easier to be vulnerable now because it's acceptable, but that sort of thing is still so major.
No, it is, and it's sort of those expectations or perceived expectations as well, because sometimes it's not necessarily true, but it's how you see
Mm,
or what's been put out in the sort of the social media, or sort of all these sort of influencers or influencers that you see of what they're leading the lifestyles, and then you can't sort of keep up with, or sort of that discourages individuals to say that they're not doing well, or that they don't see the support or where they could get to. So I think you're absolutely correct in that part around where it's those traditional viewpoints. Now, I'm from an Asian background, and it's even more so in that sort of culturally around the male being the provider
mm.
of that family. I believe, yes, roles are changing. There has been an equal sort of footing, but we're nowhere there yet, so to speak. So it's a work in progress, and excuse me, it's that part where I feel the more we do, or the more we talk about it, it sort of breaks down those barriers, and it's about doing it with your close family members or friends. Sometimes it's easier with friends than it is with family members because there is no real judgment or so, or maybe people are having similar sort of things. But then again, I'm not sure how you find it, but I think men tend to not have meaningful conversations around their own cycle with other men, so to speak. It's very sort of superficial at times, or it's
Hmm.
not giving the depth of conversation that you really want to be having. There is, if you want to call it banter, there is sort of jokes, there is that, but it's never really, uh, hey, look, I'm having trouble with this. Can we sit down? Can we meet up? Can we have a discussion around this? What can be done? Or can I just literally want to just vent or talk?
Yeah.
No?
My experience, just tell you about my experience of don't necessarily, and you're not after expertise necessarily, you just need to talk
Hmm.
about it. Yeah.
And this is it. It's providing that space for somebody to be able to speak and just sort of download at times. It just sort of takes. I think it's a classic one, isn't it? Where a problem shared or problem aired is a problem shared, should I say, the other way around.
Yeah.
So it's that part. So yes, and I think this is probably. I think you started off with the sort of um, statistics around suicide and Mel, and we've been unfortunate enough to have a couple of those, knowing a couple of those within our client sort of banks, and it was quite eye opening in a stage. One of them, that it was both male and female in the two opportunities, or the two circumstances that I talk about. But what it feels to me more around is actually that how it's spoken about. Where it's actually almost as if it's a crime, that when the language used around suicide is also
Yeah.
not as committing something or kill or something like that. I think it's more around the when you actually look at it as a death by suicide as opposed to what the actual language is. So I think so there is that part about nobody wants to talk about. And don't forget the statistics that you mentioned are also about individuals that have that unfortunate sort of death. The amounts of attempts. For every each one, there's probably been 4 or 5 times attempts to that as well, which didn't sort of end to what they'd planned to. So I think those are not really also noted. So there is a quite a large case for making sure that people are getting checked in on or having open discussions around challenges that they may be facing, be it financial or sort of mental health. You know.
So, given that experience of, you sadly, losing two clients by suicide,
Mm-hmm.
um, my next question was around how can we, as financial planners, initiate conversations, around well-being, um, checking in with them, etc., and particularly, with clients who are less likely to open up. I think some of my clients look at me and think, why is she asking? There's particularly some men, I would say, so why would
Sure.
you ask me that in-depth question? Just talk to me about my pension, please. So have you, given your experience through your
Yeah.
clients, but just as a wider sense, what are your thoughts around how we can start to, have those conversations, and how can we start to initiate deeper things when we want to around that?
No, that's a great question as well, because I think not only from the experiences we had within the business to actually sort of understand, because in one instance, the individual was actually, without going into too much detail, was a professional, was actually dealing with other people's mental health.
Mm.
So their own mental health was struggling, whilst outboundly they were sort of providing support for others. So it's quite common to see that where people are not necessarily sort of dealing with their own challenges, and sort of being happy to sort of overgive to others where they need it as such. So I think that was quite an eye opener as such, because we would have never have thought that would be the case as such. Also, I think it's around that part where financial coaching. When I qualified as a sort of a financial coach, and when we're doing, I think it's having those sort of questions where you are going into a little bit deeper? Because as planners, we like to look for solutions. Yes, you have a retirement sort of conundrum, or a pension would deal with that. That's the solution as such, as not to question furthermore than why or what do you expect to do. So those sort of open-ended questions, knowing more around their values, their sort of the goals that they're looking to do in the future. Why is it that case? What is their sort of relationship with money? Because as you know, money is so emotional. So it's what they're spending on is generally where their values and things lie. So understanding that more so than just, right, okay, you've spent X, great. Now we can fit it into a cash flow model and know, well, that's what you will need for the rest of it. But why did they spend X? And changing that. So I think those sort of open-ended questions is a good start to better understanding. We almost go back to basics with every new clients that we work with. We're trying to better understand why the decisions they've taken to date, and what's the purpose of it? What are they trying to achieve? Because it's so bespoke to all individuals. What is important to them in their world? It may not be a financial sort of win. It could be very much about just getting more life out or more time spent or so. So I think money may not be the purpose as such, but that's one example. Others, it's sort of I think even showing some vulnerability or showing examples to clients, and making it sort of normalizing that financial stress and such are common. We can hopefully provide a safe space for clients to share their experiences. I think that's been something that we do more of, or maybe mentioning other challenges that similar clients have faced, so they feel like they're not the only ones, or so as well. So opens up that ability for them to sort of build rapport and trust as well, and they're within it. So I find those elements are key within client conversations. Now, I'm not sure whether what you have had experience in yourself in terms of sort of clients, but I think the key within sort of financial coaching I found was having two ears and one mouth. So being able to listen more than I speak, as much as I may be to them the expert in the room, I'm actually trying to find out more about them. So I think that then sort of dictates what we do or how we work together going forward, and makes it more meaningful. So I think it's that part, listening more, active listening. So it creates a little bit more of a deeper relationship with individuals.
Yeah, I think so. And I think probably a combination, if I was agreeing, I think, a combination of all things. I think as planners, we have to accept that not, and even as coaches, accept that not every client, no client's the same, and not every client's going to fit into the ideal mold of how they might be willing to be really open, and others might not be willing to be open. I think my experience of it is that actually comes with time. So,
Correct.
young planners who are watching thinking, oh, I did that discovery and they just really wouldn't open up to me. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're not going to. You can't manage to achieve everything in that hour and a half, maybe, that you're delivering that first meeting. I think there's a massive amount of pressure for planners, advisors to try to kind of plug all these things, be the coach, be this, kind of get everything to happen straight away. And I think we can't do that. But I do think, I agree, the one thing I find that people resonate with is they do kind of like to know what other people do or other
Yeah.
problems that people have had. And that brings it to like, hang on, the way I'm feeling might be more natural and they might have
Yeah.
experienced this and been able to help people through that before. I think that's a good tip to kind of, remember if you've got another client case you can cite that kind
Yeah.
of helps break down that barrier a little bit is a really good thing.
No, you're absolutely right, and time is the key here as well. As you say, it's around ensuring that it's not all going to happen on day one, and it's going to be, obviously, you're building meaningful sort of longer term relationships. It's not transactional. It's not sort of come in and just sort of fulfilling all client needs as soon as they've told you what those challenges are. So, and we find also that you tend to find bits of information out like we've had clients for over a decade and a half that we only maybe in some of them we're finding new information out, or people have
Mm.
evolved over those period of time. Something that may have liked or were sort of a few years ago, it's not the same anymore. So you adapt, you understand, but it doesn't come across until you are having conversations with those clients and sort of making it more than just about, be it the money, or more about just sort of what it is that you're looking to achieve. Is it's sort of any life changes that have happened during clients' lives as well that sort of steers the focus away. Things like jobs, new jobs,
Yeah.
or changing, even relationship breakdowns or deaths of losing family members, or so that all of a sudden people's focus can be very different to when you may have sort of had before that. So I think that's quite an important one to ensure you're in tune with, or continue, and that will probably encourage those regular contacts, so to speak.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And actually, as you were talking there, I was thinking that we do have to remember in all of this that, we aren't psychologists. We might think, what we're looking for is, can we recognize when someone needs additional support, and from a financial perspective, from financial well-being, whether
Hmm.
we can help aid that, which, as you say, seems to be, I agree with you. I think financial well-being, poor financial well-being can be a massive trigger for for poor mental health. So
Hmm.
all we're doing is saying, what can we recognize in our clients? And that might be through the lifetime of our clients,
Yeah.
certain triggers, certain things that could mean that they're feeling more vulnerable or nervous around their financial position. And it really interestingly, I thought about, there's this, there's some great initiative, wonderful initiatives now, pushed by the FCA and various different around vulnerabilities and around
Hmm.
just understanding, how when clients are vulnerable,
Yeah.
and noting that they might change vulnerability status throughout the lifetime of you looking after them, you
Yeah.
know. And one of the things we've brought in annually, whenever we'll have a meeting with a client, is that they're already marked in some way. We've got an amber traffic light system. We've got a traffic light system. They're
Right.
already marked on a traffic light system, but we will absolutely, after every meeting, clarify where on that traffic light system we then think that client is at that point. So that might have changed. So they might have been green for 5 years and something happens and we want to push them up that vulnerability score a bit so that we can just very quickly, then everyone knows it's on the front screen of the CRM. So as soon as someone phones, we know
Right.
they're flagged as red or they're green, or, and we're just very, especially that then can bring hyper focus around those people who are particularly vulnerable in that red category, and how all our interactions. So I think there's loads of work around that kind of thing
Yeah.
that we can do as well, you know.
That's a really really sort of commendable sort of step, because as you say, it's about ensuring uh, the whole team is also aware, because you as a sort of the sort of the head planner or the coach or so may have picked up on information or any signs with regards to sort of red flags or something with clients, and then if that's not communicated across, then it's very easy for the clients to then sort of revert back to their shell and not say any more, or sort of
Yeah.
go back to where it was previously. So that's a great way, and I think from what you've noted there as well, it's sort of it's we all have mental health, whether it's good or bad, depends on the day, depends on the circumstances, depends on things. So every day is different on what it happens. So I think there are some great initiatives. I think even like something in I come across a individual follow across on LinkedIn, on sort of Rob Stevenson, that's sort of called a form score, something around how you're feeling on a particular day on a scale of 1 to 10, and depending on where you are, it happens even in sort of relationships, and even sort of at home, because you're not always going to be at your 100% 24 hours of the day.
Mm,
And the times when you're not is making sure that somebody is aware that you are not. That's probably number one, to ensure that they provide the support that you will need. But if not, then you are potentially may sort of be unnoticed. So I
yeah.
think that Yeah, that's quite a key one. And if more people that know about it, then hopefully there's more support that's provided to ensure that it's a safe space for you to then not have to sort of think about dire sort of decisions thereafter, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's about having a relationship with a client that they feel like they could say to you, I've been struggling. Some of my clients will say, oh, I'm seeing a counselor, or I've
Mm-hmm.
been struggling with this. I've got various different, a couple of female clients certainly who, menopause has created a really big challenge for them. And, having to be on medication, having to have counseling, working through all of that. Um,
Yep.
but I guess what I'd like to do for everyone listening is what signs do we think that we need to be looking out for that
Mm-hmm.
indicate clients might be struggling with financial stress and potential mental health challenges, that when they don't volunteer that
Yeah.
information? Because how
Yeah.
much of a responsibility do we have to try to self diagnose or diagnose a client's, there's a bit of a line, isn't there? But what are the things you can think about that would help us understand maybe triggers that we should be looking for, things that might change in a client's behavior, etc.?
Sure, sure. Well, over the course of the years, I think there's been a few different versions depending on clients, because I think it's also very individual in how they react to sort of things. So also knowing a client and seeing something that is not it's something out of the ordinary for that client. I could be sort of just delayed communication from the individual who typically may have always responded back to you quite sort of firmly, and then now find that he's avoiding calls or rescheduling meetings. So that could be sort of a red flag. Maybe they're being overwhelmed currently. So just sort of checking in, giving them the space, but still checking in on them rather than just wording. I think is important. Possibly with depending on anything out of the ordinary, like withdrawals from portfolios or requestments or so. That's quite a wanting to understand why or what's going on that's requiring it. I think is also a good way of trying to sort of understand that. And then more, it becomes harder with body language when you are doing many meetings through sort of virtual meetings, be it Teams, Zoom, etc. But looking at sort of their ability to sort of even just eye contact, looking at what they're focusing on, body language, what is it that they are worried about more, or what is it that they're focusing on? I think that tends to be in. I'm a very visual person, so I tend to sort of look at how people are reacting. That may be sort of speaking, but yet still seeing where they're looking at, what they're doing, what it is. So seeing whether they're interested, and that's really dependent on how an individual uh, sort of has their own ways of working out. But I think that tends to be the basic signs, And as you said earlier, we are not professionals, so when you do highlight that there are sort of signs that are showing you that there are red flags to consider, it's always also worthwhile having in your sort of referral system likes of professionals who can help or maybe guide clients towards sort of resources in the age we live in. There's so many great sort of resources, likes of Samaritan's Mind, various charities that are not sort of, you don't necessarily want to add to costs for an individual for having money problems to go to therapy, which may end up being a further money problem to try and where do they pay for that from as well, trying to sort of compound the challenge that somebody may be having as such. So I think having a good resource of people you could refer to if you did highlight that there were problems or challenges that clients may be facing is always a good way. And that it could be even coaches. And so, as you say, it's one of those where people may be talking more to an individual than they want to be. They may find it easier to talk to them than you.
Yeah, and
You
have it
know,
isolated and separate.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, we
Yeah,
know many, many financial coaches who don't do advice and they do the coaching. And then when the
yeah,
client's ready, then they'll move on to referring them to to an advisor or to a planner at that stage, because we know there's a lot of coaches like that. One thing that came to mind as you were talking to me as well is that, you know, financial well-being or poor financial well-being and poor mental health isn't always associated with just not having money or
Yeah.
having money problems,
Yeah.
because, you know, an awful lot of people who have a large amount of money find that incredibly stressful, and that sound, you know, they also feel really like they shouldn't say that because of judgment of like, why would you feel like that? You've got millions of pounds, you should be thinking, you know, you're really lucky, you know. But actually I've got clients who, the overwhelming pressure of being the one in the family, that might be like you're one of many siblings and you're the only one who has any money or
Yeah.
significant money. You might feel you've always got to come to the rescue. You might feel that, you know, and making the right decisions and tax decisions and complications. Like,
Hmm.
I do think that that sometimes, you know, it's just quite interesting. Your mind automatically goes to debt and loss of
Yeah.
job, not being able to maintain things. But actually, there is this other side to financial, you know, our clients, the type of clients that we deal with, which actually I think we need to be, you know, very aware of as well.
No, you're right. It's the quote I loved. I'm not sure who actually it was by, but it's sort of being poor and content is rich enough. You know, it sort of draws in that part. As you say, it's not necessarily always related to money because it could be that you're quite happy. Prime example, if I can and share is that having a client who in a very, very well paid job, doing well years to retirement, yet less than 10 years. But the stress and the sort of through the job, the way that the culture was, what was being, they were happy to leave earlier to just take less away in retirement to benefit them in their mental health and well-being. Because if they had to sort of stay there those additional years, they feared that by the time they got to retirement, they would have been in such a bad place. They would have not been a positive sort of use or continuation of the current role. So I think that was something that was quite eye-opening because we saw, well, you have X amount of money, you'll need X to continue to live with that. Well, they were happy to scale back quite a lot of those wants as such and say, well, I'd rather have my health as the priority that will allow me to do that and not necessarily make it about the money to allow me to do what I want to do. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right in terms of money is not always the deciding factor when you're looking at the sort of mental health and things. Yes, it contributes to affecting because if you are not able to, if people are living in the cost of living crisis, you have the sort of individuals and many people in the UK, we may be a little bit sort of distant from it in our sort of financial services world. They're living paycheck to paycheck also as well. So if you're having that worry, the last thing you can think about is sort of how do you save for retirement, which is sort of many a years down the line. You know, you're just concentrating on that shorter term goal to trying to survive. It's that sort of fight or flight sort of position. And so that visualization is not really there,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
as
and
a planner or people running business or financial planners, we, you know, that's the challenge we have of the advice gap, and the people that
yeah,
are really there, their financial challenges are are at that kind, you know, how paycheck to paycheck, how am I ever going to save for the future? Can't afford advice. So we've got people in that space with not
yeah,
great financial literacy, which
yeah,
affects your financial well-being. And then we've got the, you know, the other arm is people who are actually taking advice from us, and we've got,
yeah,
you know, they're in good positions, but actually some people really find that still very, very stressful, still, you know, have poor mental health around multitude of things. You know, I can think
yeah,
of clients specifically where we've been talking about, you know, why not take some time off from
yeah,
work, you know, this high pressure job, to just try and figure out what you actually want, because sometimes you can't see through everything to figure out
Yeah.
what you actually want. And then we can go back and rebuild everything like you did with your client who needed time, who wanted to retire earlier. You rebuild and you recalibrate around that. But I think that, we've got a twofold challenge, really. We've got those people at that advice gap end, and we've got the people who are, maybe on a more full service client that we look after, that still those challenges can come up around confidence, around money, around
Yeah.
feeling pressured to make decisions, and yeah, maintaining high powered, high paid jobs.
It is, and I think you get used to it in a certain way as well. I think that's what happens, as you say. I think I'm finding more clients open to the idea of sort of sabbaticals and taking time out and away from work. And I think it's probably the culture at work is also changing. I think post the pandemic, that sort of whole ability to, first and foremost, there isn't really ever a work-life balance. It's always a work in progress. So if anybody says that, they've nailed that. I would love to sort of see what they've actually done, because it's constantly evolving. It's depending on the stage of life you're at and what do you want from it as well. So I'm finding that there is a greater openness in terms of employers or even sort of business owners or so, but open to the idea of sort of taking that time and reevaluating what is important to them or their family or to their sort of things, and then building it from there. But as you say, that's only possible if you are out of the rat race, so to speak, at times, to then allow you that space to think. So it's definitely a strategy that many are starting to do, which is good. But I feel also that as you said previously, I think it's that sort of making it very relevant to the individual. Yeah. And as you say, it's dependent on what is important to them in their world, is where that focus then gets to be, from either planning stages or even just general goal setting.
So we're almost out of time, and we've hardly covered any. Well,
Wow.
we have covered a lot of the questions. We've just talked around some of the questions, but I want to sort of end on the last couple that I had, which was, how do you see the role of financial planners evolving in the future around helping our clients more with, financial well-being? So how as a profession we can kind of develop a little more around that. And also, if there are people listening who want to be more proactive in supporting their clients, in really talking about financial well-being, any kind of tips or message you have for that?
Sure. Wow. Time really flew by, didn't it? I didn't realize we're at that stage. Um, you know, I believe as a profession, we're definitely sort of moving forward, and the future of financial planning is very bright. Just looking at the communities that are around, likes of sort of Next Gen, likes of sort of the Institute of Financial Wellbeing, all these various sort of communities that are building for that future of our industry. I feel positive in from where it was to where we're going. So that's definitely a good thing. I think everybody has a role to play to ensure that it sort of continues in a positive step. And I think the hardest thing that we need to build upon is actually building trust with the wider audience, the public as such. I think the industry has not had a good reputation. And when you then sort of do so publicly as well, I'm not going to name sort of bodies or anything that sort of do so. It's making sure that individuals, we are here to help that. And if we can sort of show a positive light on what we do and share more of those stories, allows people to see the value that our profession so it creates, be it whether you're a planner, a coach, a paraplanner or so, because it's all bringing together the various elements of planning that actually sort of help and work towards that holistic advice for an individual, and then furthermore building in the other professionals that work hand in hand rather than competing, sort of collaborating with the likes of, be it sort of the accountants, solicitors or so, to bring together that whole collective advice piece for clients to sort of be positive and work towards it. So I think I feel great about where the future is for going. We're not there yet, but it's nice that it's sort of having that pathway towards it. I think in terms of what we could do tips wise, you asked as well. I think prioritizing sort of open communication is probably a good thing for just not ourselves individually as well, but also with clients. Because I think first and foremost, you have to start with your own self and well-being. Because I think as much as I love my children, the first thing I hear when we fly with them is that you need to put your own oxygen mask on first. As much as I could sort of put all four of my ones on, I have to come from a place where I can sort of give from. If I'm not well, then I can't really make sure that they're well. So I think it's prioritizing self-care. Well, self-part is the first part to this, and then ensuring that goes to it for individuals. As you highlight, I'm not sure how long you had for time, but I think the great, as we talked earlier today, that it's Talk Money Week. So things like what the MAPs are doing, things what sort of Next Gen Community is doing, things what Institute of Financial Wellbeing, all these various communities are open to both sort of professionals in the industry as well as to sort of consumers as well. So pointing them in the right direction is a good way to sort of encourage going forward. And if I had one more sort of tip, I think it would be sort of financial literacy. I think is something that I feel it's not given enough focus. Empowering clients with knowledge is all well and good teaching somebody something about finances and so, but then not connecting it to their own goals or objectives. There's sort of that fear of overwhelm. Great, we can bombard a client with how an ISA works or how a pension works, but then if it doesn't link with what they need to be doing or link to any goal or anything that they have, then it's just not really making them literate in any sense of the word or empowering them, so to speak. So I think we're doing a lot now with clients, sort of creating fun goals, where goals which are the fun standing for flexible, uplifting, and numbers based. So now you're making it meaningful for them, making sure that it's something that's going to be positive. And if we can achieve that and sort of link back to their values and stuff, and then showing them the stepping stones towards it, it builds a good opportunity to build longer term relationships and trust.
I like that. I like the fun goals. It's a nice analogy. It's a lot
I'm
better than a smart goal, right?
Well, yes, I'm not going to claim it's mine. It's somewhere. It was, I believe, not being numbers based, but we're in financial planning, so it has to be numbers based. So that's where the change is. But yeah, no, I think it needs to be that. It has to be relative to it. So I believe that's definitely a way of relating back to ensuring that it comes to being, well, what's important in the individual's world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Hiren. We could talk about it for a long time. I know we could. So, I think it's really good. I think both of us did that coaching course with Catherine,
Yeah.
in the pandemic, it feels like, or just post pandemic. And I think, I think if anyone really wants to try and think about how can I start to ask better questions, how can
Yeah.
doing some kind of coaching, there are so many different courses around, even if it's just a sort of an introduction,
Yeah.
certainly would help with some of that skill set. I think it was a really great place to start.
I would sort of echo that absolutely. I think it's those soft skills required to be able to get information that would help to make a better sort of advice process for the individuals you're helping. Because with knowing what is important or finding out what is the actual sort of pain points is the only way you could sort of then ensure that it's best advice, yeah, or guidance for that matter. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Hiren. It's been great today. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. And I very much look forward to continuing FEM's journey and all the various other guests I've been hearing of as well. So
Yeah.
well done on the good work you carry on doing.
Thank you.